rattling off the walls tomorrow. It'll either be because the topics are hot or because we've had another earthquake. But very seriously as we begin, on a day in which we gather at an event like this to embrace some of our rights and our freedoms and our liberties, we have elections to elect good people like this. Within our legislative bodies, we have elections to elect speakers and other officials. I'm sure you caught this morning that this was a day when there was an attempt to stifle free speech with gunfire. And look what happened. I know some people died, but there was a manhunt. We know who these people are. And from Paris, France to Paris, Texas, and across Europe and across America, people stood at this hashtag, Je suis Charlie, I am Charlie, the magazine that dared to offer up some satire that didn't exactly go over well in the radical Muslim community. As North Korea tried to do sometime before, and as some folks will try to do, what those of us who love freedom have to do is make it clear that we will not be cowed into submission, that we will not be told what kind of satire to do. We will not be told what kind of movies to release. We will not be told how to act in order to pander to extremists. And what happened today is we got a reminder that liberties must be fought for or they will be lost. So a moment of prayer, just God bless those whose lives were lost, and God bless free societies like ours where we can do things like this. It is a joy to welcome, beginning his second term out of District 114, the Honorable Jason Villalba. It is a pleasure to welcome, just unpacking his stuff out of District 115, the brand new first termer, the Honorable Matt Rinaldi. When we were setting this all up, are there debates and there are rules? I said, let's conduct it like the show, which may be a frightening concept. There'll be no calls or commercials, which is fine. But the bottom line is we're just going to kind of even it out, let these guys have equal chunks of time. But we said, let's absolutely have a good, solid, timed 2 minutes for opening statements and closing statements. And we flipped coins for that. And Matt is going to speak first for his opening statement. So Matt, your 2 minutes are on, and it's a pleasure to have you. Go, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for having me. Thank you, Jason, for setting this up and for being here for this important discussion. On November 4th, voters sent a very clear message in the state of Texas. They elected, by nearly 2/3 margins, the most conservative House, the most conservative Senate, and the most conservative set of statewide office holders in Texas history. They sent a mandate to us. Voters deserve the limited government, constitutional, conservative government that they voted for. And there's one impediment to that. It isn't the Senate, it isn't our statewide office holders, it's the Texas House. Scott Turner wants to change that as Speaker of the House. He wants to let us vote on the conservative legislation that Republicans campaigned on. And I don't really think there's much difference in what we feel the debate is. Scott Turner will allow conservative legislation to come to the floor. Speaker Strauss will kill it. Scott Turner will empower conservatives. A Strauss-led House will empower Democrats. How do we know this? We know this from the statements of the candidates themselves. We know it from the identities of the people supporting them and the statements made by the people supporting them. And we know it from history and how the House has been run in the past. Listen, the issues, there isn't any difference between us, I think, as to what's going to happen in a Strauss-led House and in a Turner-led House. Eddie Lucio, a Democrat, said in support of Joe Strauss, Democrats are vastly outnumbered. Only Joe Strauss will give us a voice. My colleague this summer, Representative Villalba, said this year the Senate this session will be the most conservative and pass the most conservative legislation in Texas history.
About 30 seconds.
And much of that legislation will die in the Strauss-led House. Ross Ramsey from the Texas Tribune said that if there's a change in Speaker, the House might pass more conservative legislation. I agree with all of them, and that's why I support Scott Turner for Texas House.
Jason.
Speaker.
Well, thank you first for Mark for being here. I mean, you're the draw. I mean, we're just sort of silent packs here.
On the radio, it's about me. Here it ain't.
Thank you, Representative-elect Rinaldi, for coming together and having this great conversation. I just saw one of my good friends, Representative Stickman, in the house, y'all. So John's here. I'm sure he's going to be supportive of me tonight. Based on the applause lines, I'm pretty sure I'm outnumbered here tonight. But I just want to say thank you for coming out and hearing the conversation we're going to have tonight. You know, look, I am the first to admit that most of what Representative Renaldi is correct. What Renaldi says is correct. We did move to the right on November the 4th. We have seen a much more strident and conservative Senate come together. I think we've seen it in the statewide office holders that we're going to have, and I think that's healthy. That's what the people have spoken to us and said that they want, and I think we're going to try to deliver on that. My issue with this debate and this conversation really is about the misinformation that's been spread about Speaker Strauss. Look, Representative Turner is a wonderful man. I've spent time with him. He has given wonderful comments on the floor about a number of issues. He is a devout, godly, conservative a person who's as a friend of mine. But I don't believe he's prepared yet to take the reins of the House. More importantly, I think that the information that you may have received at this point may not be accurate. You know, I'm an old football player by trade. I'm watching these Dallas Cowboys every weekend, and I'm pretty excited about what I'm seeing from these Cowboys. But I know when I was a football player that what was important was not what the referee said or what I told my coach I did or what even the coach said. What was important was that after those football games, in order for us to be more prepared for the next week, we would go back and look at the tape. We would look at that game film to determine what exactly it was that we did right and what we did wrong.
About 30 seconds, Jason.
Tonight, we are going to hear about the tape from Speaker Strauss. Now, you've heard that he's not a conservative, that he doesn't put bills on the floor that you like, and he's not doing the things in the pro-life community would want. But I think if you look consistently at the facts, and we'll talk about the facts tonight, and if you look at that tape, if you go to the game film, you will find that Speaker Strauss is conservative, he is transparent, he is pragmatic, he is Reagan-esque. What am I? Just bear with me tonight and let's hear the facts. Again, you may not agree with me at this point, but let's look at the facts. Tonight you're going to hear what the true facts are about the conservative state of Texas.
Let's have a hashtag. We've established one. It's one I've sort of used in preparing for this. At TX Speaker Debate, at TX Speaker Debate. And you can weigh in and probably direct some of the snarkier things to that. Right? I love old people. I love public reaction. Speaking of people who are here, the Honorable Stephanie Carter, who served well in 102 from 2010 to 2014. And a guy who I see more than some family members, and it's always great to be in the room with him, Rafael Cruz. Love to the family there. All right, then let me let it pivot back to Matt, and we're going to start broad and then get specific. The first thing that I want to know is give me a couple of really desirable things that will happen if your preferred speaker prevails, that will not happen if he does not.
If you look, we had almost unanimity in the issues on which Republicans campaigned in the last elections. They campaigned in favor of a tighter constitutional spending cap that's tied to inflation plus population growth instead of GDP, which is very important because if you think about it, if Texas ever turns blue, such a spending cap would render Democrats practically incapable of growing the size of government. If paired with another one of our governor's policies requiring a 2/3 majority in order to bust the spending cap. Elimination of the franchise tax, illegal immigration reform, stricter limits on illegal immigration, border security, life issues, Second Amendment, issue after issue, everything they campaigned on would come to the floor of the House for a vote. That's what would happen if Scott Turner were elected Speaker. Every issue you heard about in the campaign that every Republican campaigned on would come to the floor of the House for a vote. And I venture to tell you, most of them would pass. But with Strauss as Speaker, we've seen in the past that these issues have not come to the floor. They've been killed in committee, most notably the Calendars Committee, the State Affairs Committee, by his leadership team. That has been the problem with the Strauss-led House. That's what would change with a Scott Turner-led House.
Jason, feel free to weigh in.
Well, look, people always point to the bills that did not get passed. There were over 5,800 bills that were submitted during the last legislative session, almost 6,000. Of that, only 1,000 actually passed. Now, if you look back in history, even under Craddock and before, you will find that that's about the number that normally gets passed, a little less than 20%, a little more than 20%, plus or minus. It's not a function of the Speaker. No question, the Speaker does have authority through his appointment of committee chairmen, but in the end, it's the people's chamber. We are there to advance the cause of all of the people of Texas. We have the ability as chairman and vice chairman and members on those committees to kill bills. There are 10,000 ways a bill in the House can die. It's not driven by one single man. If you're going to penalize the Speaker Strauss for the bills that did not pass, then you must, of course, give him credit for those bills that have passed. And if you want to talk about that, let's just go through the litany very quickly. One of the strongest anti-abortion measures in the country was passed under this Speaker. One of the strongest voter identification bills in the country were passed under this Speaker. One of the strongest economies in the country and the highest job-growing economy in the country are promulgated by rules and regulations set forth by the House of Representatives under this Speaker. If you want progress in Texas, then you will advance this Speaker, because what he has been able to do is present a program that works for all Texans, and that is what is critical in this discussion.
Matt, a reply to the reply? Because I'm a fan of conversation. So
and conversely, Representative Villalba can't take credit for the bills that did pass if he isn't going to allow the Speaker to take blame for the bills that didn't make the floor. I do want to point out that the two specific examples. Voter ID was killed by the Speaker, the election, the session prior to when it was passed. Abortion, he's going to take credit for the Speaker passing HB 2, when the Speaker did everything in his power to kill HB 2. Let me give you the specifics. It wasn't brought up for a vote during the regular session. In the first special session, everybody remembers, on June 21st, when the bill was in the House, we knew that the Democrats were planning a filibuster and could only do it if they had one day. So look it up. The video is on the internet. June 21st, 10 o'clock session, 6 minutes long. Van Taylor, Representative Taylor, comes up to the mic and says, point of parliamentary procedure. Why are we not meeting tomorrow? Why are we jeopardizing this pro-life bill? And the answer from the Speaker was, we're not meeting tomorrow because we're not scheduled to meet tomorrow. God. That one day caused that filibuster that killed the bill in special session, and the second special session, the bill was passed because Governor Perry was adamant about getting it passed.
I think some progress is being made. Keep going. Go ahead, Jason.
So, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, let's go to the game film. Let's look at what really happened during that debate. A couple of things. One, everyone knows that the regular session, the Senate is under the 2/3 rule. When Senator Hagar attempted to pass essentially the same bill that Representative Laubenberg passed, it was not able to get out of the Senate because of the 2/3 rule. It was regular business that was not able to get to the floor. The Speaker and his team were highly aware that it would never be able to pass during regular session, which is why we waited until the special session. Let me give you another fact that's important if you're looking at the game tape. Representative Laubenberg, the champion of this bill, the person who put forward this bill in the first place and was able to get it across the finish line, wonderful woman, wonderful conservative. She said, and I quote, "This bill and bills like it would not have been able to come to the floor and pass but for the help of Speaker Strauss." If you want the facts, look at the facts. The people that were actually there on the floor talking about these issues when they mattered the most. Representative Laubenberg says it. Other pro-life organizations like Texas Alliance for Life says it. Other people believe it's strong. You can denigrate with your laughter about what they do, but they advance the cause. In the end, we are sent to Austin to make a difference. And we are protecting lives of the unborn in Texas because of what the speaker has been able to do. We can talk about rhetoric all day long, but in the end, you're after results. My constituents are after results, and the results are that now we have a bill that prohibits abortion after 20 weeks. And before Speaker Strauss, we did not.
Let me ask one more. I'm a fan of this, so Matt, go right ahead. I think progress is being made.
Because I'm really enjoying this discussion about abortion.
Yeah. It's a joke.
First of all, I've heard this argument before. The argument is that the abortion bill was not brought up during regular session because the 2/3 rule in the Senate would have killed it. Yet we know that leadership's method of operation was not to bring up bills, it was not to kill bills simply because they would die in the Senate. Right. In fact, conservative legislation was often brought up when they knew it would have died in the Senate. The Sanctuary City bill in 2011 was brought up. After when they knew that the Senate could kill it with the 21 vote rule. So in the regular session, they brought up the Sanctuary Cities bill, passed it in the House when they knew it was going to die in the Senate. Then a special session was called. The Sanctuary City bill was added to the special session. Senate passed it out without the 21 vote rule, came to the House, died in committee. Okay? Gun bills last session. The gun bills in the Senate, most of the major gun bills like campus carry, dead on arrival. The Senate declared them dead on arrival. The next day, they scheduled gun day in the House. Gun bills, half off. We're going to pass all the gun bills. Why? Because we knew they were going to die in the Senate. Know what the difference is with the pro-life bill? They were scared it might pass. That's why they killed the pro-life bill. And by the way, in terms of other representatives who supported the pro-life bill, saying that the speaker was responsible for HB2, let's just go to the source rather than third parties. The speaker himself does not even take credit for HB2. Right. In an interview in October of last year after the session, he was asked, "Are you proud of HB2?" He wouldn't say he was proud of HB2. In fact, he said that he didn't think life was a, quote, big issue, and wished it hadn't even come up in special session.
Oh my God.
It passed in spite of him, not because of him.
Right. Right. Thank you.
Jason, go ahead and wrap this up, and I'm going to move to another issue for me. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, let's wrap up the issue. And again, go back to the game film. Let's just talk about the facts tonight. The facts are, before we had Speaker Strauss, we did not have the following bills, and after Speaker Strauss, we do. Let me just name them. One, HB2. The author herself gives credit to the Speaker. Two, sonogram. Now, sonogram was a bill that we passed last year that was important. Also a pro-life measure. Also gives credit to the Speaker for having passed that. Three, parental notification for minors receiving abortions. This is something that was very important. The Speaker not only voted on it, but he was helpful in putting that to bed. Four, the budget itself prohibits any kind of funding for abortion services. Five, the actual budget itself, HB1, which my own representative-elect was actually against before, when he was campaigning, actually says that it prohibits any kind of funding for abortion services. Look, we can talk all day about words. Politicians are good with words. But in the end, what you care about most are results. And the results are that before Speaker Strauss, we had a less anti-abortion sector in Texas, and afterwards, because of Speaker Strauss's leadership, we have a greater protection for the unborn.
All right, Jason, let me stay with you to have first shot at the next thing I want to bring up, which is immigration. And one of the things I see in here is frustration that we don't seem to be ambitious enough about securing the border and enforcing the law.
Right.
Is it unfair for the people who say that that didn't seem like a big Strauss priority?
Well, I would say that unquestionably, illegal immigration is one of the issues that is really going to be impactful in this next legislative session. It's terribly important because it's impacting people all over the state of Texas. We have a crisis in Texas today. Action must be taken. We've got to do what is right for the people of Texas. And we know that every dollar that goes to educate or to house a child or an individual who is not here as a citizen is one less dollar for our children. And that's something that we need to address. So let's, again, go back to the record and look what Speaker Strauss has done. So under Speaker Strauss, we have provided over $383 million for the next biennium for border security. At both instances where he was asked to sign on with the Lieutenant Governor and the Governor, additional resources to bolster the National Guard, or the Texas Guard, and as other agencies that would provide support, he was able to put $30 million, almost $1.2 million per week for border security, additional border security, and then on December the 1st, for the next fiscal year, provided an additional $86 million. Now, if you combine all these, we're looking at roughly $500 million of border security funds that not only had been approved by, but in certain instances, the 86 and the 30, actually signed on individually by Speaker Strauss. This is critically important to him. He cares about this issue. I care about this issue. I know Representative-elect Renaldi cares about this issue, and we will address this issue. We spend more on border security than every other state combined. We have done a good job in the face of the abdication of President Obama in dealing with this issue, and you can guarantee that people like myself and Representative-elect Rinaldi will go down to Austin and do this again with the support of Speaker Strauss.
Matt, go ahead.
I'm hearing the argument over and over again that we'll point to a bill that was passed and say because of Strauss's leadership it was passed, without providing that causal link as to actually what he did to pass it when we don't hear him talking about it, ever. You know, it was reminding me of something, because my parents are here now in the audience.
Where are your parents?
My parents are right here in the front row.
Hey guys, we've met before. You come up to the house and say hello. It's Frank, right? Dan, it's good to see you, Dan.
We were talking the other day, you know, because when I was a kid, my mother could not get me to clean my room, ever. When I was like 10 years old. And I used to make every excuse in the book as to why I could not clean my room. I would hide, I would leave the house, I would come up with anything possible. Eventually, they put enough pressure on me, by threatening to punish me usually, I would clean the room. My mom's sitting right there. You can ask her afterwards. I don't think she'd say I exhibited great leadership in getting my room clean.
Courtney's probably a better representative of whether I can clean your room now.
Likewise, just because the Speaker caves to public pressure on an issue, intense public pressure, one of the most conservative states in the country on certain issues, doesn't mean that he took a leadership role. Including, in fact, most of the time he doesn't talk about these issues. Representative Villalba's used the same terms in describing him that he has used himself. He's a pass the budget and go home kind of guy. In other words, those conservative issues that you care about, like immigration, Second Amendment rights, life, he does not. Those are just things you talk about in the campaign, and when you enter that Capitol dome, we don't really do it. In other words, those are things said to trick you to walk for us. And I don't believe that, and Scott Turner doesn't believe that. In fact, okay, so let's talk about immigration specifically. Sanctuary City bill, not passed up, didn't find the floor last session. In fact, no major immigration legislation found the floor, except a Sanctuary City bill, like we discussed earlier, was passed when they knew it was dead on arrival in the Senate. And that's it. An E-Verify bill hasn't made the floor. There's been bills that would have eliminated the DREAM Act, which provides in-state tuition to illegal aliens, never made the floor. And how can we give him credit for leadership on this issue when I don't think I've heard him say the word immigration? We can't give him credit for taking leadership on an issue that he hasn't taken leadership on himself. If you care about this issue, there's one alternative in the Speaker's race. And that's Scott Turner, who's been out front on this issue.
Let me ask you both, because a lot of it has been references to the other house, not references to the Senate, things that are dead on arrival in the Senate. If Texas is so darn conservative and the Senate's so darn conservative, why is so much dead on arrival over there? Either of you.
Well, I believe it's largely a function of the procedures that are set in place by the Senate. I mean, they do have the 2/3 rule. Until this year, we didn't have the tenor of the senators that we have now. I mean, with 9 new faces in the Senate, all of whom derive from the Tea Party caucus, if you will, I think you're going to see a much more conservative. I think we'll see a much more conservative Senate. And I've said repeatedly, this is a good thing. I mean, look, the people have spoken. You know, if you're going to look at blogs and things you read on Facebook about what I've said at meetings and how the House is going to kill conservative legislation, I plead with you in all sincerity, please actually listen to the tape. Listen to what I said. That was a meeting where I was giving a "I'm just a bill" speech. The Republican Party asked me, how does a bill come to fruition? How do you make a bill law? And I talked a little bit about what the process was. You know, you have the bill, it originates, and you have it in committee, and then ultimately goes to calendars, and then it goes to the floor, and there's a debate. And what I said was, in a large number of situations, and this is just statistics, these bills will end up dying in the committee process, and calendars is one where it ultimately ends up. I didn't say that was a good thing or a bad thing. I just said that's what would happen. Look, I am proud of my conservative bona fides. I believe strongly in the conservative principles of what this speaker represents. But, you know, 80% of these bills die just naturally, and they often die in committee. Going back to immigration, again, I plead with you, just take a look at the results. I know that watching legislation being made can be like watching sausage or even, you know, other situations that you don't want to look at. But in the end, what matters most to the people that I represent and the people that Representative Renaldi represents are the results. And the results are we have more money today than we've ever had before for border security. We've tripled the resources for border security by three times since 2009. 2009, we've tripled the amount. This is something that's important to Texans because we know it matters to you. We've done it. You have to give credit to the man who's at the top of the food chain, because without that credit, without that leadership, these bills may not have passed. Just as Representative Rinaldi said, if you're going to penalize the man for not getting bills passed, you have to give him credit for bills that do pass.
Having brought up money, I mean, weigh in with a couple of money questions. And Matt, let me go to you first. Are there things that a Scott Turner speakership would bring priority-wise in terms of spending? I mean, we have even everybody in the room largely conservative, but man, there's some things we probably have to find some more money for, like transportation. Where does that come from? Do you perceive, and I'll have the same question for Jason afterward, a philosophical difference in spending and spending priorities between a Speaker Turner and a Speaker Strauss?
Well, sure, I do. I think both Speaker Strauss and Scott Turner say that they want to prioritize the important parts of the budget, which is transportation, education, and water. But we saw last session then, in fact, the Speaker didn't prioritize transportation or water. He saved it for the end, which is why you were voting on it the last two elections. So I do think that Scott Turner would do a better job of prioritizing the important infrastructure items. I think the big difference will be in exactly the size of the budget and the size of Texas government. Listen, Representative Villalba talks as if, oh, well, you know, there's so many bills. Some of these bills that just didn't get through were just oversights. Well, we're not talking about oversights. We're talking about items on the budget like a constitutional amendment restricting growth in spending to inflation plus population growth every year, a 2/3 vote to bust the spending cap, eliminating the franchise tax, 4/5 votes to raise taxes. This is stuff that was at the top of Governor Perry's budget compact. This is the top of our platform. These are the top 5 items in spending. You don't just forget it. That's like leaving your car somewhere and just forget it. I mean, you don't forget something like that. So what will a Turner speakership do? I think you'll see a budget that's more fiscally responsible. I think you'll see these budget constraints getting through. And in fact, we can look at historical evidence from last session. We did have a budget that, well, at least appropriations last session that increased 26% over the previous session. Now, Representative Villalba is going to say that's incorrect because, well, you know, we appropriated it last session, but we spent it in the previous budget to eliminate the increase. Well, look over Strauss's entire speakership, okay? If you look at the growth in appropriations of the all funds budget, the size of Texas government grew 33% during his 3 terms. That's staggering, and I don't think you would see that during a Scott Turner speakership.
No.
Jason.
Well, he's right. I would say that 26% number is a misnomer. PolitiFact, which is a bipartisan organization that analyzes these issues, took a look at it and they suggested that it was actually lower than growth plus inflation. You know, look, in the end, we can only spend as much money as we can bring into the coffers, and then we have to keep it very fiscally conservative. I think with what's going to be happening with oil and gas, in the next biennium, we're going to have to tighten that belt. I think being fiscally conservative and prudent is the right thing to do. I think you'll see the speaker do that. But again, I ask you, let's look at the results of what happened. Texas is the strongest economy in the world, not in only the country, but in the world. Texas has low taxes. We've got one of the strongest tort reform systems in the country. That is largely from Governor Perry's leadership, but also was passed under Speaker Strauss. We have seen more job creation in Texas than any other state by a factor of 3x. These are important facts. In the end, what matters is progress for Texans. Making sure that you have a good job, making sure your kids can go to college, making sure that we can provide water and transportation, and we've been able to do that. Water was something that was at the end of the debate because it was one of the most important issues that we had to face, and it was very complex. What we crafted was a water plan for 50 years that we were able to fund with your help and your vote, 80% I mind you, to help us to get that water in place. We needed that water to make sure that we could keep our economy strong, grow our economy, and attract new businesses and keep businesses. And we were able to do that because of Speaker Strauss's leadership. There's no question about his leadership role in water and transportation. He formed a pact for both of those, and we're able to get it passed. In the end, what we care about is not rhetoric or process or talking points. What we care about is what's good for the people that we represent. Representative Renaldi is aware of that. He's going to go down to Austin and do a fantastic job. This is one of the most articulate and thoughtful conservative minds in the House. I look forward to working with him. I think he's got a great future ahead of him. He's going to be a fine leader for his movement and for the movement conservatives. But in the end, what he cares about, like me, is making sure that our children and his children will be able to have places where they can go to school in good situations and have strong economies to have good jobs, and that's what we're going to do.
And let me ask you both, because I had you both on the show day before yesterday, whatever it was. And for Matt, when I had Jason on, we talked a little bit about compromise, which is either a vital part of governing or a horrible, dreadful word. I mean, the C word. Do you ever? So there's been a lot of Speaker Strauss under the spotlight, because he is the speaker and there's more of a spotlight. Let me ask you to hit the crystal ball and take me into a Turner speakership, and then I'll have Jason comment on that or anything that he would like to. Do you envision the Scott Turner speaker style to be no compromise ever? You got to compromise sometimes, or in view of the mood that seems to be behind some of his support, it's people who don't want to compromise much. Don't you have to sometimes?
Well, I think first of all, you always find common ground, and common ground is different from compromise. You work towards what you agree on. Compromise is good when you advance the ball in your general direction, not when you're moving it backwards. So you need to look at each compromise individually, or suggested compromise. But I ask you, when you have a 2/3 Republican majority, almost all of whom campaigned on the same issues, the gridlock isn't being caused by a lack of compromise. It's being caused by a lack of following those principles.
Right.
And I just want...
Thank you.
One quick thing I want to point out, which hasn't been brought up yet tonight with the Strauss-led House. The Strauss-led House hasn't only not been implementing conservative legislation, it has been enabling and passing Democrat legislation, okay? With most of the Republican Party shut out of the decision-making process. Mark Jones from Rice University did a study showing the win rates for every representative. The percentage of time each representative was on the winning side of a vote, okay? The median Democrat win rate was 94%, Republican was 84%. That wasn't the shocking part. Okay, the lowest Democrat win rate was 88%. Lowest Republican win rate was 34%. Still not the most shocking part. Most shocking part was 2/3 of the Republican Party was on the losing side of more votes than every single Democrat in the Texas House. That tells you what legislation's coming to the floor, what legislation's being passed, and it's being passed with a small sliver of leadership joining with the Democrats to pass legislation that the Democrats like. I don't like a Texas House where Lon Burnham, who's to the left of Obama, is happier with the vote more times than Jonathan Stickland.
There you go.
Mr. Vill.
That's awesome.
My good friend, Representative-elect Rinaldi, is trained as an erudite litigator. He is capable of advancing ideas that might not otherwise be advanced. I'm a simple business lawyer. I deal with facts and figures. I'm an economist.
You just heard a few.
I'm an unfrozen caveman lawyer right now.
Unfrozen caveman lawyer. The study that you referred to, and Mark Jones from Rice is a wonderful man. He's very smart. I enjoy speaking with him a lot. But in the end, if you look again at the statistics, there are 63% of us who are Republicans in the Texas House. Last year, if you look at the primary author of a bill that was authored by a Republican, you would find that we passed 67% of our bills, and the Democrats only 33%. Now you have two other classes of authorship, and I don't want to get too deep into the weeds because folks don't care about procedure. You've got a joint author and you've got a co-author. Joint authors and co-authors can only join a bill in the event that the primary author allows them to do that. It's often done for political purposes. You want some Democrat cover here, you want some Tea Party cover here. You bring people on as joints and co's in order to get their ability, or to get their constituencies for a vote. So what ends up happening is if you add in those joint authors and co-authors, which Mr. Jones did, and which Hard Hatter's analysis did, you would see that they have a greater percentage. But if you look at their methodology, they didn't do the inverse. So they don't give Republicans credit for bills where they sit on, let's say, a joint authorship or a co-authorship for a Democrat bill, and they give that the rights to Democrats. They don't give credit for Republicans. If you look at it again, 67% of the primary author bills were authored by Republicans, which only have 63%. Republicans control that House, and again, it's subject to the leadership of Speaker Joe Strauss. And let's talk a little bit quickly, because I didn't answer your first question, about my good friend, Scott Turner. Now, let me just tell you again, Scott Turner, if you've ever met him, charismatic, he's a leader. He's got great vision. He's articulate.
We've met him. We've met him.
All these things are true. I'll tell you a quick story. Take me off the clock.
Stories are always.
It's a good story.
I'll give Matt a story here in a minute.
One day we were on the floor, and one of our friends from the other side of the political aisle brought in her pastor for a day, who was not a pastor at all. He did not speak the language that we speak. He got up there, by that I mean the religious language, and he gave an homage to greatness and sunshine and beauty and rainbows and all that. And we finished it, and there wasn't a single reference to God or Jesus Christ or my Savior. And I was so upset by that. I immediately marched over to Scott Turner's desk, and I said, Scott, you got to help me. He's like, what's wrong, Jason? I said, I just finished the beginning of this session, and I didn't get a prayer to my Savior. He's like, I said, Scott, will you pray for us? Because if you've ever heard Scott pray, you know it's serious. So he laid hands on us. It was me and Jeff Leach, and I think Stick was over there. And we all stood around, and we had a prayer on our own on the side that he gave for us, and it was magnificent. When Scott speaks, it's pretty impressive. And we finished that day. We had a great day in that session. It was because of Scott Turner. So I've got nothing negative to say about him. What I'll say is this. Look, there are a lot of good people in the House of Representatives. Now, it's going to be a good one. We've had some good members. There are a lot of really smart folks, just like Matt, going to be there. That doesn't mean they're right to lead this House in trying in complex times. My good friend, Representative Turner, has a session under his belt, and that's going to be a good experience for him if he manages to get this. But in the end, he has not evidenced the ability to command the respect of the other side and get those votes. Giovanni Caprioloni, I know many folks are probably upset with him, said himself.
Yeah, a little bit.
Scott's just not prepared for this role. And while I love Representative Turner, I just don't believe he's ready to step into this a very significant role where he's going to have to reach across the aisle, and I know this word's a bad word in this room, and compromise in bipartisanship fashion with the other side in order to get things done. Because we have to get things done, friends, and that's what this is about, getting things done.
Matt, I bet Matt has a story now. I bet you got a story. Let me weave your story into the following question.
I'm going to do it.
Okay, you go ahead and then I'll give it to you.
Once upon a time, not too long ago,
Yes.
Here we go.
somebody was in a debate, and he was trying to refute a study that made his candidate for speaker look very bad. And he gave an answer that refuted a different study, and then tried to deflect the attention from that with a story that was very long. The study you talked about was the Hard Hatters study that dealt with authorship. The study I'm talking about with win rates just took every single vote and took every time a representative was on the winning side of any vote. Didn't deal with authors, which is a valid point on that Hard Hatters study. It is a valid point on the Hard Hatters study. It's not the best study. The Jones study dealt with win rates, which means that yes, Lon Burnham was on the winning side of an issue more than Representative Stickland and 2/3 of your elected Republican representatives.
That's which is a superb time to ask what is essentially a horse race question. Then I'll have a few minutes here to take some of the wonderful ones we've gotten from the audience. This came up a lot in the Boehner thing. The discontent over Boehner, the discontent over Strauss, seems loud and numerous. The objective alien from space looking at this and saying, is this likely to happen, is that the odds are really, really long at a change in speaker actually happening. If we've got all these 2/3 conservative majorities, if Texas is so incredibly, if this election, I mean, my gosh, Greg Abbott, Dan Patrick, Ken Paxton, who's in office already, we're a redder state than we were we're heading in the right direction. So, why ain't this a closer race? Why is this a great long shot?
Is this to me?
Yes.
I mean, we see with our frustration with the U.S. House that it's hard. It's hard to get our representatives sometimes to vote in accordance with what the grassroots wants. I mean, it truly is. Plus, your representatives who are supporting Scott Turner, like Representative Stickland in the audience, they're putting themselves out there. They won't get the best committee assignments. They won't get preferential treatment in the House. It's a brave road to take, and it's a tough road to take, and sometimes people will only do it if they see the clear path to victory. Well, let me tell you what. There's a lot more support for Scott Turner and a lot more sentiment against the leadership than you see on the surface. You know, I told you about what the results were in the House in terms of win rates, in terms of Democrats being empowered and passing more legislation than Republicans with help of a minority of the Republican Party. People see that. The members see that, okay? Strauss has less support than you see in the media, and it's because the representatives see that. But I think Scott Turner will get more votes than have announced now on the day when we announce our votes. Because in the end, people know how you feel. People know that you're passionate about this and you see the importance of the vote. And in the end, you guys bring about change. You guys make us vote in accordance with your wishes. Thank
you. We'll be down on the 13th.
We'll go to some audience questions for our last 10 minutes. Go ahead.
In answer to your question, why are the numbers not different? And the answer is quite simple. It's because our constituents are telling us that they agree with the leadership role that we're seeing.
No.
In this room, you can tell me no, but I've knocked on 1,000 doors. I've received 10,000 phone calls. And I can tell you how we register those calls is they agree with the strongest economy in the country. They agree with the strongest abortion laws in the country. They agree with voter identification laws that are the strongest in the country. They agree with water. They agree with transportation. They agree with tort reform. They agree with the issues that matter most to Texans. They agree with expanding charter schools. They agree with doing the kinds of things that are important for our families. And they will talk to me and they will talk to Representative Renaldi in order to get the leadership that they want. They want a Reagan-esque, pragmatic leader, and they're going to get it from Speaker Strauss. That's what I want. Look, you've heard me talk on and on about Representative Turner. Good man. 75 Republicans have already pledged to Speaker Strauss. All of the Democrats have pledged to Speaker Strauss.
No wonder. There you go.
Of the remaining 25 Republicans, Of the 25 remaining Republicans, half of those are going to go to Speaker Strauss. You're looking at 12, maybe 15 votes tops. And I know that there's a great need for a debate on this issue. But in the end, this race is over. It is over. No. It is.
No, it's not.
Okay, so
Take it to the floor.
Here's what we should do. We should
Don't make me come out there.
Let's go back after the vote, and let's look at the vote, and then we'll digest it after.
The audience clearly wants this.
We'll be done on the 13th, and we'll be around in 2016.
Let me say publicly right now, because I hear this a lot from people and audiences on the web. I plead with you. I plead with you right now, publicly. Bring me an opponent. Bring me an opponent next time. I'm asking you to do that.
We will.
We
just did.
Because democracy demands a contest of the ideas. I'm asking you to bring somebody that you think is better than me, and let's let the people of my district decide.
We will. Thank you. We will. Thank you.
I've got a couple of these on the cards here. We've got about 7 or 8 minutes. I think we're all good on time. But we've got a lot of good questions. In fact, let me go to one on a specific issue. I wanted to know if there would be a Scott Turner, Joe Strauss difference on what the House would do in terms of expansion of Medicaid under Obamacare. Jump ball, whoever you want. Matt, go ahead.
Want me to go?
Yep.
Yeah, there would. I mean, Scott Turner has said that he would not expand Medicaid under Obamacare. He's opposed to implementing Obamacare exchanges. The Speaker of the House and leadership last session attempted to pass a bill expanding Medicaid under Obamacare. They tried very hard to do it, and they were in support of it. There was an article in the San Antonio paper last session about Joe Strauss's support for Medicaid expansion. They actually did pass a bill that expanded Medicaid under Obamacare. Then it was reconsidered after some representatives saw what leadership did in slipping it through. So yes, there is a difference. Medicaid will not be expanded under Scott Turner's speakership.
It's curious. I was the one who voted first to oppose Obamacare. Again, the blogs that you read will say, I'm in favor of Obamacare. I was the member who was going around to the House and saying, look guys, you just voted in the wrong direction. We got to flip our votes. And ultimately the vote went down to kill the expansion of Obamacare. You'll see under a Strauss-led House in the 2015 session that we will again brush back any attempt to expand Obamacare or Medicaid. I know that the governor has talked briefly about looking at a Texas solution. I think that might be something that we can consider, but Obamacare is off the table. It's not something that even what you would deem to be rhinos like me would be in favor of for. So I will be opposing it. I know Matt will be opposing it. You won't see expansion of Obamacare under the Texas House this session.
An audience card says, it asks both of you to have this debate 2 years from now as we go into the very next session and look back and tell us what your guy did that was so great.
I'm in.
So what would it be? If it's 2 years from now, looking at the ground ahead, what would you say if we're sitting here, in the beginning of 2017, about to inaugurate a Republican president?
Right.
If our spirits are even higher than they are now because of that, retroactively,
Hopefully the future first father sitting
there you go. What will we look back on predictably, and what will Speaker Turner have done that you'll say was his shining account? Well, you're sort of Speaker Turner. Whoever goes first. Take your guy.
Matt said I could go first on this one, so I'll defer to him. Speaker Strauss will have again led a session that resulted in results for the great state of Texas. You will see a transportation bill that will come forward that will look an awful lot like what Governor Abbott has talked about. You will see the franchise tax being scaled back, if not completely eliminated. In the next session, we're going to see immigration reform that will include a voter ID and perhaps even rolling back or adjusting the Texas Dream Act. In Texas, you're going to see additional resources that will be going to immigration protection to protect our border. Border security is preeminent in the minds of both Lieutenant Governor-elect Patrick and Speaker Strauss. You will see that our economy will continue to grow and grow healthy because we have planned for some lean times. Look, we've got to be very serious and prudent about the months ahead and the years ahead as oil and gas begins to fall. We've got some issues. It's time to tighten that belt. I mean, if ever there was a time for being fiscally conservative, this is it. We have money in the coffers today, but in 2 years, I think it's going to be much tighter. I think under Speaker Strauss, you're going to see that kind of the kind of leadership that we need to plan and prepare for that circumstance.
Matt, tell me the story of 2 years of Scott Turner as Speaker.
I think if Scott Turner as Speaker combined with our conservative governor and conservative lieutenant governor and conservative Senate, you will see the greatest group of bills pass through our legislature, conservative bills, that you will have ever seen in any state in the country. I think we have an opportunity with Scott Turner to show the country that our ideas work, that promoting limited government and individual liberty works. Specifically, I think you're going to see a constitutional amendment pass in a Turner speakership that limits spending to inflation plus population growth, preventing future growth in government, 2/3 vote to bust the spending cap, elimination of the franchise tax, 4/5 vote, a constitutional amendment requiring a 4/5 vote to raise taxes. I think you will see school choice, real school choice, that allows money to flow with the student to the public-private homeschool of his or her choice. I think you will see real immigration reform that not only secures the border, but eliminates the magnets that bring illegal immigrants into the country. And I think you will see another great pro-life bill. Unlike the current speaker that considers life not a big issue, Scott Turner does, and you will see a piece of pro-life legislation pass the Texas House next session.
On a school night with the temperature dropping at virtually every minute to get everybody out on time, let us do our 2 minutes each to close and by our prior event coin flip. Jason, you get to go first.
Well, let me thank you, Mark, for running just a fantastic conversation. Thank you again, Rinaldi. And thank you, audience, for coming out tonight. It's cold, and we do have school tomorrow. And look, I know this room, it doesn't agree with a lot of what I have to say. I understand that. And I want to say that people like me who might not necessarily agree with you, we understand your frustration. We understand the concern that you have when you see the state moving right, but you don't feel like you're getting represented properly in the House. And I want to just let you know, look, Representative Renaldi is coming to the rescue. You've got good people like Representative Stickland, one of my good friends in the House, going to be there for you as well. But people like me too believe in these issues. And Representative Strauss, or Speaker Strauss, I know you don't believe this, I know you don't agree with this, but he's going to be there to provide progressive, or forward.
Comes out.
Progressive and forward-looking and solutions-oriented.
The truth came out.
Leadership. And that's something that's important for Texas. Look, I don't know why progressive is a bad word.
Well, there you go.
Wow. Give me a chance.
I know it should be.
As a person who believes that we are here in Austin to help the state move forward, I believe it's important that we do that. And I think it's important that we let leaders like Speaker Strauss move forward with the kind of leadership that I know will benefit the great state of Texas, will benefit my children and the people that I represent. So thank you for your time tonight, and thank you for listening to what we have to say.
Thank you.
Lying in wait for that one. Progressive as in making progress. We all get it. We're just having fun here. And 2 minutes, Matt, they're yours.
I want to thank Mark again for doing this. I really do appreciate it. And I want to thank Representative Villalba, who I mean is really great for coming out here.
It's like a run.
But yeah, I think he did a great job, and I appreciate him having the discussion. It's important. You know, some see Republicans on stage with differing opinions, and they see disunity. They saw disunity in March and disunity in November. I saw unity in both those elections, and I saw a unity in message of the Republican Party. Every Republican campaigned on smaller government, strict constitutional spending limits, life, Second Amendment, immigration enforcement, school choice. I saw this throughout the Republican Party. We all campaigned on the same issues. And we won overwhelmingly on those issues. But now some people after the election want to create a party and see unity in a party that just passes a budget and goes home and doesn't pay attention to these principles, okay? That party's a fantasy. It doesn't exist. Meanwhile, we have all of these great grassroots people here in the audience, the people who couldn't make it. We're eager to help our GOP leaders. We're eager to help our leaders pass the platform that they campaigned on. That's the route to unity. Do what we said we were going to do. And let me tell you, this window's closing. Okay, if Texas ever does have if we ever do have a blue Texas in our future, we have a small window. We've already wasted 6 years. We have an opportunity right now to do historic things, not only for Texas, but for those watching all over the country, looking for us to set an example. And that's why I'm supporting Scott Turner for Texas House, is because he realizes that and will bring us into a new future. And by the way, I just want to point out, a lot of people have said to me, you're being brave by supporting Scott. It's a tough decision to make. It's not. This is the easiest decision I've ever made.
This was one of the easiest gigs I ever accepted. This is, I went out back for a Sprite at one point. I just asked stuff. Can you join me in showing some love for these magnificent men up here? Thank you guys. Thank all of you for coming. And God bless Texas. And I'll see you on the radio tomorrow.
Initial gut reaction right now.
The truth comes out.
My initial gut reaction is Matt Rinaldi did good. Look, I've got respect for Jason, but his slip of the tongue. We're going to see a progressive agenda with Joe Strauss was a great one. That explains Jason and where we're going to go in the 84th with the Speaker Strauss.
We'll see y'all in Austin. Okay.